Populism is one of the main themes of my book, and the way I define populism is through this opposition to elites by political leaders that claim to represent the volonté générale, the general majority, the general will of the population, arguing that it is a democratic right for them to remove the power of the corrupt, illegitimate elites and bring the power to the people which they best represent. Majoritarianism is very much linked to populism exactly because of the fact that in a democratic environment, the majoritarian versions of democracy are those that are closer to the interests and the desires and the priorities of populist leaders. So in the case of Greece and Turkey that I study in my book, populist leaders have developed constitutional reform programs that would shift democracy in both countries towards a majoritarian end. The reason I compare Greece and Turkey in my book is because of the rising significance of populism in both countries, although in a completely different ideological context. We can talk about the rise of left-wing populism in Greece and right-wing populism in Turkey, but my book is trying to highlight that differences between left-wing and right-wing populist movements are not as big as we may first imagine. So in both countries we've had constitutional reforms in the last decades, and very recently in Turkey again, that have highlighted some of the shortcomings of majoritarianism. And this is the reason why my book is focusing on that. Based on the Greek experience, we can argue that the rise of majoritarianism is linked to decreasing government performance and institutional performance because of the decreasing importance of meritocracy and the concentration of power in the hands of a very small elite, and because of the fact that social trust declines in the context of majoritarianism. Populist elites are interested in perpetuating social divisions, especially when their performance falls far below the expected and the promised one. So in that respect, social capital in countries where majoritarianism is dominant falls. And I argue that this is one of the main reasons why Greece has been one of the countries within the Eurozone that has suffered in the economic crisis, and is the single country that has suffered consecutive economic crisis. So unlike countries like Portugal or Italy or Spain that were hit by the economic crisis of the Eurozone, but they were able to recover through the partnership of the big political parties. In Greece, majoritarianism led to a very polarized political environment that prevented this partnership and this alliance, and this made the Greek crisis even worse. The Greek example can teach Turkey that building social trust and consensus is a very important mission for political leaders. The Greek crisis would not have been as big had Greece has not fallen into the majoritarian pitfalls. So in other words, constitutional reforms that are shifting away from consensus politics and bringing the country towards majoritarian practices and majoritarian politics are likely to further aggravate social divisions in the country. So the advice is that Turkey should be working rather on consensus building, bringing the different segments of the society, the secularists, the conservative, the ethnic minorities, on board as a common democratic project that will include everybody, it would exclude nobody. what surprised me was the return of the constitutional reform debate in Greece along majoritarian lines. Actually, in the beginning of my book, I plan to compare Greece of the 1980s with Turkey of the 2010s, so like recent constitutional reform debates in Turkey. However, the Greek government introduced a discussion about constitutional reform that brought forward some very important majoritarian features, such as the proliferation of referendums in Greek government. So referendums could be much more common. They would be very easy to introduce referendums into the Greek sort of government and in the public debate. And there were discussions there that were highlighting that this was a major shift from consensus-driven constitutional debates in Greece towards the argument that in the end only the people and not the institutions are going to give solutions. And this distrust towards institutions and this emphasis on the people and of course on the leaders that represent the people best are very majoritarian features and very populist features at the same time. So in many ways, populist majoritarian return in Greece in a way that I hadn't expected in the beginning. So in a sense, it reinforced the relevance of the argument.